Just like regular,
Hi guys, so today we have to explain, what is the clutch brake and how does it work. So for some people it will be something new, for some people it will be like a refresher, and if you have any questions, you can just give me the question and I try to answer. What is this? This is clutch brake, right?
Yeah.
We have like two different clutch brakes. One clutch brake you can put, to mount this clutch brake you have to take whole transmission off. The second option, you have a clutch brake where you can just split and you can disassemble, put in the shaft and lock. So it's easy because clutch brake cost maybe around $70. So, but if you have to take the transmission off and replace everything, so that's why it costs like $1,800. So that's why this clutch is not so useful like the clutch you can open and close. All right, so one more time, clutch brake operation and why do we have a clutch? What is it? Because we have like three different things. We have a clutch brake, which is here. We have a clutch plate, all right, and also we have a clutch pedal. So you remember we have three different positions of the clutch pedal. In the material we have this picture. So we have a top position, we have a middle position, and also we have a floor position. So each position means a different operation. And before we start talking about clutch brake, let me just explain something, at the beginning. You see, to drive this truck, what do we have to have? We have to have an engine in the truck. Engine is here. So let's just try to memorize. So without the engine, you can't drive, right? And to the engine, we have an attached flywheel. Flywheel is like a big metal plate, bigger than, clutch, and heavy. Yes. And if you start the engine, this flywheel starts spinning. If you shut down the engine, this flywheel stops spinning. All right, so this is important, and maybe you remember if you start your truck and to warm up or you're waiting on the intersection, your speed of the engine is 700 RPM. So we use tachometer as a RPM gauge, and this is one of the most important things for shifting and to judge how the engine operates. So this is the system number one. Without the engine we are unable to drive this truck. Second system, this is clutch plate. All right, you see the clutch plate on the board, and the second thing which is attached to the clutch plate is transmission shaft. Transmission shaft. And at the end of this transmission shaft, what do we have? We have a gear. We have a gear. So this is system number two. We have two parts. So clutch plate and transmission shaft with a gear. So this is another thing we have to have in the truck to drive. And another section is, everybody knows, transmission, right? So what is the transmission? You remember your bicycle? Did you drive bicycle? So what do we have in the back? Gears. So you can have 7 gears, you can have 5 gears, in the bicycle, even more. It depends on the, bicycle. And why do we have gears? to make easier, right? Go uphill or downhill, or maybe drive slower or faster, right? So that's why we have a gears like this in the transmission, right? So we have like a different size of the gears, because in the track we teach you, we have a 10 speed. We have a reverse and second reverse. So that's why we have a lot of different gears, you know, and we have a small gears, medium gears, and the bigger gears, right? And if we come back to the bicycle, and for example, you have a 7 gears. So which gear you have to use driving uphill? The smaller one?
Yes.
Or the bigger?
The bigger one.
Bigger. Or not the small one.
Makes it easy.
All right, it make it easy, because you know you can just, you know, pedaling, and you just can slowly go uphill, right? Then if you drive downhill, you change to the smallest one, right? So please remember, this is the same rule in the track. So if you put the first gear, so it means this is a big one. If you apply the gear number 10, right, it is the smallest one. What is the difference? The difference is, and please remember that the gear number 1, the big one, is slow, so the vehicle is driving slow when you engage the gear number 1, but is powerful. So it means that you can move this heavy truck, is 80 pounds, right? 80,000 pounds, I'm sorry. And you can move this heavy truck from place, even uphill. If you make a mistake, maybe you remember and you forget about the switch, and instead of number 1 you put number 6 in 10-speed transmission, what happens? You kill the engine, right? It happens even during the state test if you forget about the switch after you stop on the parking on the intersection. So this guy is slow. I'm talking about speed, ground speed. And the small one is weak, but is fast. So you can drive, let's say, 65 miles per hour. I hope you're not gonna drive 70 or 85, right? So this is a major difference. And if we go to the transmission of the truck, so we have the same rules. So understanding that is important. So you remember we have a switch. You can go from the low range to the high range, and if you upshift, you have to remember to use the switch to gain specific gears, 6 to 10. All right. So we have 3 systems, and what is behind? Take a look. What is behind?
The drive shaft.
Exactly. So some people call this like a cardinal shaft. You remember? If you see any tractor is moving, right? So this is spinning all the time, right? So usually we have 2 parts because we have a huge coupling, right? Which connect. And what is in the back?
The rear end.
What is in the back?
The rear axle.
Differential.
Differential. Yeah.
Differ. You remember? There is a lot of mechanism inside, right? Also, gears. So it transfers the power of the engine to the wheels. And maybe you don't know, but only one wheel is live, is powered. The second wheel is not powered. So that's why if you're driving so heavy truck like behind me, this 80,000 pounds, it means that only one wheel makes it move. Clear? Mm-hmm. Good. So from this point to this point, everything is connected, secured during driving, right? And you have to disassemble any of these parts only if you have a problem, right? So in the shop, or maybe something happened on the road. But you can disengage engine from clutch and shaft, and also you can disconnect shaft and clutch from the transmission, right? So this is the very important thing, because you can change gears. You follow me, right? So it's not a problem. So how we can disconnect flywheel and clutch? What do we use to disconnect?
Clutch pedal to press.
Exactly. So you can press the clutch pedal. So what happens? These two plates just will separate, right? Okay. Then, how do you disconnect transmission from the shaft, transmission shaft? So system number 3 from system number 2.
Let up off the clutch.
Put it in neutral?
Exactly. Neutral. All right? So, if this gear, you remember this is a heavy gear here. If this gear is connected to any transmission gear, so you're driving, right? So, when you put on the neutral position, you separate transmission, so the back of the vehicle and transmission, from clutch and engine. So that's why you can wait on the intersection, put on the neutral, or maybe you can warm up the truck in the morning, right? So that's why you don't drive, because you put on the neutral. So we have like a 10 forward speed in the truck, and just one gear which makes these two systems disconnected. So between, transmission and clutch. Clear, right? Good. So we can do it for what? To shift gears, to engage first gear, and then when you start driving, to shift all other gears. Uphill, upshift, and downshift. And maybe you remember this picture. I don't know if it's gonna be visible here, but the clutch has like a 3 positions, right? Clutch pedal. Clutch pedal. So first question, if your clutch pedal is on the top position, so it means you don't touch it. You just leave it up. So what is the situation? Is this 2 plates, so flywheel and clutch plate, together or separated?
They're separated.
They are separated? When you,
Until you press your clutch and the pressure plate hits the clutch.
are you sure? So take a look. You're driving 2,000 miles to California.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want these two guys be together, right? Because if not, you are not driving. So you keep clutch 2,000 miles down?
No. I just want to get in like here. To keep it.
No. Gear is here. I'm talking about connecting engine to the clutch. So if you want to have these 2 plates together, and you have to push the clutch pedal all the time, it doesn't make sense, right? So please, this is understanding. This, if you don't touch the clutch, these 2 guys are together. So flywheel and clutch plate are together. This big clutch. So to disconnect, you press the clutch. All right? Second thing. For shifting, because you remember, we mentioned at the beginning that, you use clutch, so you separate engine for shifting. And what happens? For shifting, it's just necessary to press to the halfway. You don't have to press clutch all the way, like in the passenger car. You remember, you drive maybe stick shift, so you press clutch and you do whatever you want, right, with your gears shifter. So you don't have to. For shifting, upshifting and downshifting, we just press clutch pedal halfway, no more. And this is the second position. So why do we have floor position?
For your brake clutch.
Clutch brake.
Clutch braking.
Yes. For the engaged clutch brake. So this is the only position you engage clutch brake. So we have to right now explain what is the clutch brake, right? Why do we use this clutch brake? You see, this is like a little piece, but this is the most important thing if you try to start the driving, forward and backward. Let's analyze what happens in the morning, right? So let's say we have the morning like today, it's cold. You come to the truck and you try to drive, let's say, to California. Can you just get in the truck, start the engine and go? Why not? So first of all, you have to warm up this big piece of metal, right? So if you try to be safe, so you have to warm up this machine. And the second reason you have to wait and you are unable right now to start. You remember, we have no pressure. This is 2 air pressure gauges, and in the morning usually you have a 0 pressure, right? So what does it mean? So you have not enough pressure in the system, in the tanks, to release your parking brakes. So this is, even if the truck is warm, let's say we have a summertime, you start the engine, right? And you try to, start driving, it's impossible, because even if you release, you push these 2 valves down, they pop out. Why they pop out? Because there is no pressure. Is it clear? This is understanding of air brake system also. So, in the morning, what do we have to do?
Let the primary tanks fill up.
Yeah, but we talk about today how to use the clutch brake. And what is it? And what is it? Do you see me over there is working?
Yes.
Perfect. Tell me if something is wrong.
Okay.
So, what do we do in the morning? You come to the truck, you adjust your seat, right? And what do? You have to start the engine. How do we start the engine? First of all, press clutch. Take a look what happens. You press clutch. So you separate, you separate, not put together, you separate, they are together. You separate these 2 big plates, the clutch and flywheel. So engine is like a separate system. Why you separate? Because maybe you have engaged any gear here, right? Doesn't matter, in the evening you forget to do. And when you start the engine without clutching, right, you just jump and kill the engine. Jump and kill the engine. That's it. So to safely, securely start the engine, you just separate the engine by pressing the clutch. And some trucks has a special device, like a security device. Then you are unable to start the engine if you don't press the clutch. You remember the, like automatic, cars, if you don't press the brake, right, you are unable to change your gears.
Safety neutral.
Yes, so this is like a, safety device which you have to understand and, use. So we press clutch, right? What do we do next? Take a look. We start the engine, right? Or you can just make sure that you are on the neutral, right? So you make sure that the system number 2 is separated from system number 3. And then you start the engine. All right, let's say it starts. Engine starts spinning. And like we mentioned before, the engine is spinning, like an idling speed is around 700, 650, 700. So take a look. At this moment, when you start your engine, this flywheel is spinning. Clutch is not spinning, right? Because you separate these guys.
Right.
And also, the transmission in the truck is not spinning because the truck is not driving, right? So it's on the full stop. So you have to see that only engine is spinning. But if you are sure that the transmission is on neutral, so what you can do, because you have to leave the truck, right? You have to make a pre-trip inspection, right? You do it. So what do you have to do? You just slowly release clutch pedal. And it means that you slowly put together these two plates. Clutch plate and flywheel. Next, when you put together, so also you have to remember that at this moment you engage these two systems. So the clutch and shaft and this little gear, it also starts spinning. So right now you have two spinning systems: engine and clutch and transmission shaft. The only system which is not spinning at this moment is transmission. Yeah. All right. So till now everything is clear. And for all of you, please remember, driving is spinning, right? If the system is not spinning, we can drive. So that's why if you put everything together, you're driving to California, right? So it means that all these systems are together and everything is spinning. They are synchronized, right? So everything is spinning. That's why you can drive. So if you separate any of these three systems, so you slow down, right? And finally you can stop spinning, start driving. Next. After 10 minutes, you go, around your truck, you check that everything is fine, you test the truck, and then it means you're ready. Oh, you have air pressure. You remember you have right now maximum pressure. It might be 120, it might be 125, it depends on the settings. But you have a maximum pressure, so it means that you can release your brakes. Parking brakes, right? So then you can drive. So this is we go to the point right now. What do we have to do right now to engage the first driving gear? Because we have to, let's say we have a heavy truck and we put the first gear, the lowest gear, right? So what do we have to do right now to engage the gear?
Press the clutch.
Press the clutch. Good. What next?
Put it in gear.
So we can just press and go into the gear?
No, we have to
Press the
press
service brake.
the service brake. Press the
Service
clutch all the
brake,
way.
huh?
Press the, no, press the foot, press the clutch all the way down.
All right. You see?
But the clutch brakes
Yes.
like that.
So what do we have to do? We have to, let's take a look how does it work. Let's say you press the clutch like you did. So you separate these two guys, right? So flywheel and clutch. But take a look how heavy it is. It's really heavy. So it's still spinning because it's impossible to stop this after you separate, right? Immediately. So it's heavy and it's spinning. So, but it's slowing. This guy is spinning 700 because of the engine. But this clutch plate starts slowing down. So what does it mean? It means that this little gear is also spinning, right? But you remember, the transmission gears are not spinning. So can you imagine if you try to do what you said, that you press the clutch and you try to go into the gear? So you try to put something which is still spinning, maybe 300, maybe 200, maybe even 100, right? into the gear which is not spinning. So if you try, you see the heavy metal pieces, right? So what happens? You start ruining transmission. Yep. You start ruining transmission if you try to do that. So please, transmission is not spinning, right? So it's impossible for you, because to put these two gears together, you have to have like at the same speed. If you have at the same speed, they get into, right? They synchronize, correct. So it means that transmission is not spinning at all. It's impossible because you have to hire, like I said before, 1,000 people to move the truck, right? And maybe the transmission starts spinning. So the only way to put together, transmission gear and this transmission shaft little gear together, what do you have to do? You have to stop that one. Okay? So we have to stop this big plate which is connected to the transmission shaft, which is right now still spinning. So the only way to do that, we have to use clutch brake. This is clutch brake. So you see, if you compare this clutch brake to this heavy metal piece, right, because we have 3 pieces usually, not just one, but it works. So the same thing, you remember when you're driving bicycle, you press the brake, but you don't gonna stop immediately, right? It takes time until you stop. So the same thing here. You press this clutch against the clutch plate and you start slowing down, start braking the clutch. So where is this in real life? Is this position. You see, this is clutch plate. So you put this clutch brake next to the clutch plate, and when you press your clutch pedal to the floor, you engage and push this guy against clutch plate. So this is the idea of how we use and how does it work. And in real life, if you are in the truck every day right now, so and you try to start the truck from full stop, right? So you have to use always clutch brake, always clutch brake to stop clutch plate and this shaft and gear from spinning. Agree? So please, we have to be very patient if you start driving the truck on the parking lot, because most of you think that this is synchronized transmission. It's not synchronized transmission. Synchronized transmission you have in your passenger car. So it means that when you press the clutch, so you can immediately do whatever you want with your shifter, and there is no noise, no problems, okay? You can go wherever you want. In unsynchronized transmission we have in the trucks, so you as a driver should synchronize this machine. All right, so that's why we use clutch brake, we use RPMs, we use shifters to do that. Is it clear? And please remember, even if you have because this clutch brake could be worn a little bit, this is like this is a clutch, so it starts warming up, right? If you use this every day, all the time, almost. So what does it mean? That it depends on this condition, and also depends on the condition of the clutch. So sometimes it takes a little bit longer, sometimes it takes a little bit, faster to stop the truck, is to stop the clutch plate. So please remember, we use clutch brake only when you try to start the vehicle moving forward or backward. Never use this clutch brake when you shift, when you drive, because all systems are already spinning. Now, because the transmission is not spinning, we have to stop the clutch. When you go from 1 to 2, from 2 to 3, so all systems are spinning. Transmission is spinning, engine is spinning, clutch is spinning, so we have to just separate and go to the next gear. We don't have to stop the clutch. So stopping the clutch when you're driving is terrible mistake. Why? Because you slowing down this system, and then when you finally realize and you release your clutch, so these two plates comes together, and the difference in speed of spinning makes that the clutch will be burned. You see, this is a burn clutch. During the brake you can see and touch it, okay? But if we just separate for a little moment these two plates to change gears, right? So there's not gonna be a big difference in speed of these two plates. So that's why if you separate and put together, like a tapping the clutch, you remember, right, from shifting classes? So you tap, so it means that you just separate for a moment to go to neutral, right? You put together, so they're still spinning with the same, and then you just have to connect again, tap again to go to the next. So you connect two systems, not three, because if you press the clutch for shifting and go to neutral, so you have like three different speeds. Engine is spinning, clutch is slowing down, and also transmission is slowing down. So we have a synchronized three different systems. So it is terrible, it's difficult, it's almost impossible without graining. All right, so question,
how are you today?
Oh.
My student just started driving on the yard, and so you saying that if I keep the clutch depressed, it will burn the bearing plate?
So you know what, if you're driving on the park,
I'm constantly out there on the yard, and I constantly keep depressing.
yes,
the
so
clutch.
you know what happens, you just separate all the time and put together, so it means that you warm up. The clutch is going to be hot, and that's why you burn the clutch. So after you use the clutch, you have to give clutch time to cool down.
Oh, okay.
To cool down, yes.
But that's why it should be really recommended not to double clutch, because you burn that clutch out.
No. It's not it's not exactly the problem. The problem is that of course, floating, it means that you save your clutch,
Yes.
but you have to understand and use, and a lot of companies requires to use double clutch, not just floating.
Some don't want you to double clutch.
You know what? If you just separate for a moment, I know, but we can talk about later about this.
Because I just wanted to know.
Okay, your question?
So when you're putting it in first gear, that's the only time you push it all the way down.
No, maybe make it more clear. If you have a truck, so you can drive forward and you can drive backward. So not only first
First and back.
and reverse. So both. So it means that anytime you have to move the truck, you have to use clutch brake. You have to use clutch brake. If you try to engage the first driving gear, maybe we can define like this. First driving gear. And in real life, maybe you notice that, if you have an empty truck, an empty trailer, right? So there is no load. So you can start with the gear number 3. Right. So it means that also in this situation, this is first driving gear. So you know what I mean. So the major, the notification that the truck is in the full stop. So in this situation, if you try to move the truck, doesn't matter which gear you use, you have to engage clutch brake to start moving. And what does it mean? So it's slowing down, right, the clutch plate, and it takes like 5, 4, 6 seconds. It depends, like I said, of condition of the kind of truck. And then the situation is that you feel under your hand. So always what I recommend you to do is not like in the diagram that you boom, you fight with the transmission. You feel under your hand that the clutch starts slowing down. So you have just a little pressure. You can make a little pressure, and you feel like it's gonna be boom, 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 click. So the final moment, it means that you stop the shaft, right? Stop the clutch. And if you still have a problem to put together, so you have problem here, right? So it still doesn't get in the gear. So what does it mean? So you have to also remember, it's not the problem with the truck. The problem is that these tools are against. They are not in this position, but in this position. Okay, so you have a problem. That's why you can go in fully into the gear. So what to do? Don't fight. Don't push. What do you have to do? You have to just release a little bit clutch. You have to play with the clutch pedal. Just a little, 1 inch, no more, and press again. Why? Because you have to just let it move a little bit and stop again, and then it again. So this is the key technique. You have to use clutch pedal if you have a problem to go into the gear. But remember, if you play with the clutch pedal, you play just a little bit, like a half, maybe 1 inch, that's it. Because if you release to the half, the clutch starts spinning again. Does it make sense?
So,
Yes.
okay, so one more question. How can I tell when my clutch needs to be replaced? Is it a certain feeling as a new driver?
So
How
the
can I tell
clutch
when
or
to
clutch,
replace my clutch?
because clutch, it could be like two problems. One problem is gonna be this clutch is warm and it's not stopping, so the clutch is just keeps spinning. So you try to engage, and it's all the time you feel graining, right?
Okay.
It is impossible to stop this big plate because this is damaged.
Okay.
And the second thing, this is a little bit more complicated. So you have a lot of pads here, spring. So if they are worn, what does it mean? That the clutch is going higher and higher. So that's why it's very difficult even to put the gear, and from time to time you have to adjust the clutch. So we do clutch adjustment. But finally, when the clutch is worn, so it's impossible even to engage, and you have to have a heavy problem, and then just go to the shop, and they diagnose if the problem is with the clutch and with the clutch brake. And let me explain. I give you the sample, during your regular practice, what happens, how to better understand. So let's say engine is warm. What do we do on the parking lot? We drive forward and backward, right? Doesn't matter if it's gonna be like straight backing or offset or parallel parking. So what do you have to do? Let's just analyze using this picture one more time. First of all, the engine is running, right? And you have to start driving. Forward, let's say forward. So what do? You press clutch. So take a look. You separate engine, right? But what we recommend is just press clutch all the way down at once. So that's why at once you activate clutch brake. So it means that when you press clutch to the floor, right, and you have to wait like a 4, 5, 6 seconds, have a little pressure and have a little feeling under your hand, and you will feel it's gonna be bum, 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 and finally click. You are in, right? So what does it mean? That you put together right now this gear, so shaft and clutch, into the transmission. So the first gear is engaged, correct? So it means that the transmission, because the vehicle is not driving, and clutch, because it's connected, is synchronized, is not spinning, right? So the only spinning part right now is the engine. But we have a separated clutch plate and flywheel because you keep clutch down, right? You remember, you clip, clutch down. And then to start driving, you have to smoothly, right? Because take a look, there was a big difference. This engine is 700. This guy is now spinning at all. So to put together these two plates and save, not burn, you have to smoothly release your clutch. Don't just take it off. Just smoothly release your clutch pedal. So you put together these two guys, they start spinning together, and then you're driving forward. So it means that if we have this big truck here, right, so the guy is driving forward. So all systems, engine, clutch, transmission, is spinning, and you're driving. So it means that at this moment you are synchronized. You did synchronization and everything is synchronized. You're driving. Okay, and after let's say 200 feet, you have to stop. So what do you do to stop? Take a look. So first of all, you press clutch. So again, take a look what happens. You separate. Understanding this is very important. You separate, right? Because if you don't separate and you press the brake, you kill the engine. Okay? Because you stop the truck and you don't separate these guys, so automatically you kill the engine. So to avoid killing the engine, you press the clutch. So you separate engine, right? So then you can safely apply your brake pedal to stop the truck. Is it correct? So you stop the truck. So when you stop the truck and you keep clutch down, what's going on? Engine is spinning 700 RPM, like idling speed, but transmission and clutch, because they are connected, they are synchronized, engaged, so they are not spinning. They are not spinning, right? So what does it mean? So that at this very moment, the transmission is still synchronized. You keep the vehicle stopped. So take a look. Now, what do you have to do? You have to apply reverse because you're gonna go back, right? So we just forward, backward, forward, backward. So take a look. Because this guy right now is not spinning at all. So what happens? You just very easy, you don't have to wait 6 seconds right now. You just go to reverse because they are not spinning. So it's easy. You don't have to stop the clutch because the clutch is stopped. So you go from one to reverse just without no waiting at all, just neutral and reverse. Because these two guys are not, this clutch is not spinning. You follow me? Yeah. This is the key to understand this system. You just go from reverse to from one to reverse because the clutch is not spinning at all. But let's make a different option. You're driving with any instructor and let's say you stop the truck. So you press the clutch, so you separate and then you stop the truck. And maybe you need to have some conversation, right, with the instructor before you start going back. So what do you do? First of all, to spend like 2-3 minutes talking, you have to first of all put on the neutral, right? So you separate right now you like a desynchronized transmission and clutch. And then you can safely take your foot from the clutch. And that's why these two plates, they comes together again. So it means that when you're talking to instructor, so not only engine is spinning, but also clutch is spinning because you took off your foot from the clutch pedal.
So we really just using the clutch to engage, disengage, and to clutch brake.
Yes, let me just finish this idea because you know we have to follow. So at this moment when you speak to the instructor, right, so what happens? You have again engine and clutch spinning. You see, engine is spinning 700, and because the truck is not moving, you have what? Transmission in a full stop. So that's why then you make a decision to go back. So what do you have to do? At this moment you have to use again clutch brake. So what do? You press clutch again all the way down. So it means you separate engine from the flywheel, so from the from the clutch, and then when you press, you apply this clutch brake to the clutch plate. Wait again 4, 5, 6 seconds, it depends, and then when you feel that it's gonna stop, just go to reverse. So it means these two guys are again stopped and engaged, so they are synchronized, and then slowly release your clutch pedal to start moving. To start moving. Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you say put it in reverse, now, which way is reverse on these trucks?
So all the way to you and forward. And forward. Reverse. To backward is first gear. And what is important, guys, because maybe nobody pay attention. Take a look. To engage and to use clutch brake, you have to be able to do what? To press clutch all the way down. And the problem is that we have a tall people, we have a short people. If you are a short guy, all right, and you try to feel comfortable in the truck, so people try to, in the passenger car, right, they feel good. All right, but at this problem, if you feel, comfortable, you are unable to press clutch to the floor. So this is the first idea when you get into the truck. So this idea says that you have to adjust your seat, that you will be able to press clutch to the floor. Okay, so for some people it should be all the way down and also all the way forward, and maybe some people should have a pillow behind. I know that this is not comfortable, but how you can drive the truck if you don't use clutch brake? And believe me, if you ruin transmission of your future employer, so it will be a big problem. They're gonna fire you because it costs a lot of money to fix the transmission. Any questions?
Isn't there a way of really knowing? I know that you feel it, but what about the RPM? When does the RPM come into place? Because I know that if you sense and you learn your truck, you hear you can tell
Yeah.
by just the sound.
But this is different story. I know what you're asking for. This is a different story. We're talking right now, you mentioned shifting, procedure of the shifting. Right now, is not this is just applying the first gear, so move the track. So the shifting will be, another, lecture. So right now we're talking, if you have experience, of course, you hear, you feel. The feeling you have to have right now, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Don't try to force transmission, guys. Don't try to force transmission. What does it mean? That if you try to, exercise something, like I said, go to gym. Don't go to the track. All right? Because this is technique. And if you use technique, so you will be able, to engage and use clutch brake. So thank you very much for this lecture, and I hope that it will be helpful.
Thank you, Master. Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it. That was great.
I forgot this.
Got you plugged up still. I'm good.